The Roger That from Fairfield Circuitry is a drive pedal partially inspired by broken FM radios. And in this video, I'm going to show you 5 pro tips for using it. The first pro tip is what I consider this pedal's signature sound, which is set all the knobs like this and then turn the tune knob until the pedal starts to make this sound. That's the sound that I think is this pedal's trademark. And one thing that's notable about it is that it stacks very well with itself. So when the thing you're about to hear me play, I start to bring in some overdubs. I'm playing different guitar parts. They're all using the exact same settings I just showed you, but all together they just sort of blend and fuse into something very cool. The next pro tip is that you can eliminate all of the weirdness of this pedal and just use it as a very killer distortion. Here are the settings for that. This is what my tone sounds like with the pedal off. Doesn't sound like much. Here it is with the pedal on. I think that sound is so cool that it actually makes me want to check out the other drive pedals from Fairfield Circuitry. I've never played them, but they have one called the Barbershop. There's something about this drive sound. I don't know how similar it is to the Barbershop, but it just does it for me in terms of what I want a normal distortion to sound like. There's a larger pro tip here, which is that I actually think this much gain, I guess it's what you would call like a medium gain pedal, is maybe all you ever need. Like even if you want to play thrash metal or something that typically takes like high gain or ultra high gain, sometimes I think if you play that with only this much distortion, it actually sounds like more savage and less squashed. But the trick for that is to double track your guitar part. If you can double track something with this much gain, that to me, I think sounds truly satanic. Pro tip number 3 is just to understand what this pedal is really doing, which is it's applying frequency modulation to your signal, just like an FM radio station would do as it is about to broadcast something, and then it demodulates that just like the way a radio receiver does it when you listen to something. Except this pedal introduces some errors into the process, and that's like the fun weirdness of it all. If you understood everything I just said, you can skip this part and go to pro tip number 4. If you don't, I'm going to try to explain it now. Okay, so the way an FM radio station works is that they're always broadcasting at a particular frequency. Like if you listen to 101.1 FM, it means they're always sending out a signal at the frequency of 101.1 megahertz. But if they want to send out a song on that frequency, they go to their frequency 101.1 that they're broadcasting on, and they like wiggle the frequency up and down a little bit over and over and over again many times a second. So 101.1 gets a little higher in frequency and a little lower in frequency and a little higher and a little lower. And they do this very precise modulation of the frequency. And then your radio receiver looks at all those little wiggles and uses like every little up part and every little down part and every little up part per second to reconstruct a new wave. And that new wave that is like modeled by the hops in the frequency, that's whatever they were trying to send you in the first place. So if they want to play a song, they wiggle the frequency in a way that models the wave shape of that song. And then your radio receiver looks at the wiggle pattern and reconstructs the song that had been encoded in those wiggle adjustments. Except they don't call it wiggle adjustments. They call it frequency modulation because you're modulating the frequency. You're just changing the frequency. Okay, so all this pedal does is it takes your guitar signal, sets up a frequency modulation like a FM radio station would do, and then demodulates the signal and just translates it back to being what it was to begin with. Now, in a perfect world, that wouldn't sound like anything because you're just modulating it and then demodulating it, and you're back with what you started with. But the fun of the pedal is that it introduces some errors in between the modulation and the demodulation steps. So the shift knob is just like a filter EQ. That's all it's doing, but it's in between the modulation and demodulation steps, so it breaks the symmetry there. So after your signal gets like encoded, they then mess it up with the shift knob so that when you try to decode it, the symmetry is broken and it's not quite what it's supposed to be, and you get some weird, funny results. That's one of the things the pedal is doing. The other thing is that the tune knob will change the demodulation frequency to be something wrong. So you encode the signal at one frequency, then you turn the tune knob and it tries to use the wrong frequency to decode it. And it kind of works, but since it doesn't work perfectly, you end up getting a lot of the weird sounds this pedal can produce. And then in terms of the switches, the R switch where it says 1 or 2, that just increases the range of the tune knob. So if you put it on 2, it's a wider range and there's like more wrong frequencies to choose from. And that's why on 2, the pedal will be like more unstable. It's like more wrong. 2 is like the more wrong setting. And then the other switch, F, where it just says 1 or 0, that's inspired by like old voice filters on like telephones or walkie-talkies. That's just another EQ filter that will protect the essential frequencies for the human voice. And that was something they used to put on walkie-talkies or whatever so they could eliminate inessential frequencies and just give themselves less information to have to deal with or use up less bandwidth. So that's what that switch does. And then the other thing is that there's a hole in the pedal. This is for receiving control voltage, but we're going to talk about that in pro tip number 4. You can move the tune knob with control voltage. You just send the control voltage into that hole. Control voltage is just like a fancy version of expression pedal values, except you usually can't use an expression pedal to do it. So for this video, I use the Korg SQ-1. I actually got this from Perfect Circuit. That's like a website and a store that you can order stuff from. And they have good customer service. Sometimes I just write to them. This is what I did for this video. I just wrote to them and said, I don't really know anything about control voltage. Can you help me get started? What's like the easiest, best thing to start with? And they gave me this. If you want to buy this, or if you want to buy the Roger That or any pedal, you can use my affiliate links with Perfect Circuit to buy it. I'll put them in the video description, and I will get a small commission on anything you buy. So if you want to support the channel and buy stuff, that's one way to do it. Anyway, back to pro tip number 4. What I ended up doing was I set the pedal to be relatively stable, but then I used this to send out a control voltage so that it would move the tune knob a little above and a little below wherever it was, back and forth, just to give it this sort of like ongoing flicker effect. And that actually ends up sounding pretty cool. It has this quality that it's like whatever you're playing is like like giving off light, or like is like reflecting glare. That's what it sounded like to me. It was like reflecting glare. The last pro tip is noise is an instrument. This one's more of a mindset, but I honestly think like advanced at the highest level is sort of learning to be able to use noise in like a musical way. And one way to get good at that would be to just study like the backing tracks of sample-based hip-hop. Like there's all kinds of creative uses of noise there. You could also watch Emily Hopkins' YouTube video about using this pedal and discovering noise music. I'm in it. I'll put a link to it in the video description. Another way to get started is to take a pedal that's noisy like this and see if you can end up using the pedal as the instrument really more than whatever your normal instrument is. So for this next example, I set up just a looping drone with the mood pedal. I just sort of set up, I didn't even think about it that much. I just like set up some ongoing drone over D natural because I had something in mind. It sounded like this. I just had that going over and over again. I ran it through the Roger That and then sort of messed with the knobs of the Roger That, looking for anything that I could grab as like a cool sample or as a cool loop. And after about 4 minutes, I found this. The reason I grabbed that one little moment is just because I had this feeling that if I looped it, it would be a cool rhythm. There was probably a bazillion moments like that in the 4 minutes I spent with the pedal, but that was the little instant I picked. And so I just cut that out of the recording and looped it and then built this over it.